Welcome to the High Tech Freedom Podcast. This is a podcast where we bring successful tech sales professionals, thought leaders, and entrepreneurs to share best practices, insights, and lessons learned with other tech sales professionals. As a sales professional, the more we learn, the more we earn. Once we earn it, how can we put those hard-earned commission dollars back to work to build additional income streams that will create the freedom we are all working to achieve? I'm your host, Chris Freeman. I'm a high-tech sales leader, real estate investor, and lifetime learner.
Happy 2023, and thank you for all of your support and great comments, feedback, 5-star reviews. It is so appreciated and really helps me get the podcast out there to more users. So our topic today is goal setting. So as we head into the new year, everybody is talking about goals, resetting goals, new aspirations, stopping or starting something. And, I did a couple episodes at the beginning of 2022. If you want to go back and check those out, it's episode 7, Resetting 2022 Goals, and episode 9, ultimately how to achieve them. So this year, my episode is really focused on the mistakes I've made when setting goals. And trust me, I've made many. So what are the 5 big mistakes I've made when setting goals? Number 1, I've set too many goals, and I'll touch on each of these here in a second. Number 1, set too many goals. Number 2, set goals on things I cannot control. Number 3, setting goals that don't align with some bigger vision, some 5 to 10 year vision or longer. Number 4, I did not review my goals each day. Number 5, not setting a reward or celebrating the achievement of the goal setting. So for me, I've been an avid goal setter. When I was 18 years old, I stumbled into a in-home sales type of role and eventually a management training program where there was a tremendous amount of focus on self-development, which included goal setting. We talked about it all the time. And just as a result, I've been consistently going through some goal setting process every single year, but it hasn't always been perfect. So as a result, I've learned a few things. So let's go to my top 5 mistakes. Number 1, setting too many goals. Look, if you're a motivated person trying to achieve something big over your life or within the year, this is hard not to do. You're gonna want to do a bunch of things during the year. There's so much you want to accomplish. When you have too many goals, the challenge I find is it's difficult to stay focused or even remember all the goals on a daily or weekly basis. This is why it is so important to review those goals as part of your daily planning or however you like to start the day. One thing I did one year was I set just one goal. I was actually trying to kind of simplify the whole process and create some more wins because I just felt like I was struggling a little bit with this challenge of too many goals. And so I set just one goal, which really allowed me to have a more intense focus. Well, this year I'm back to setting more goals, and I have set 10 goals across the following categories, which is pretty typical for me. Something financial, something career related, more in my sales leadership role, something services or charity related, something about my podcast, something about health, something for the family, something about relationships, so personal relationships outside the family, a hobby related goal, that is my fun one, something around real estate, and something around education or personal development. Now, what I'm doing this year to try to get better at managing multiple goals is out of those 10 goals, only about 3 or 4 require a full year of focus. The others have been set up with more of a one-time thing that I want to get done during the year, which is a thing that's 100% in my control. So for example, on the podcast front, I want to double the podcast downloads in 2023 over what we did in 2022. And this is going to require a number of specific activities over the year. And I'm really more focused on the behavior and the activities than I am that actual doubling number. I think it'll come no problem when I focus on some of the specific activities that I have laid out. But my point here is that is a full year of focus versus I have a family goal. It's a very specific one-time activity, which is a vacation goal that I think will be an important family bonding activity. My second mistake that I've made, so I've set goals that I cannot control. And, why set a goal that you cannot control? I mean, it ultimately sets you up for failure, frustration. And what do I mean by that? So I've had times where I set a goal to accomplish a specific number. And I just mentioned it like at my podcast. But typically in my career, it's been more of a, some sales number, maybe some investment return on my portfolio, or even a golf handicap number, which, by the way, is probably my most frustrating goal I've ever set. Now, some of you may disagree with me on this point, but just hear me out. These are great aspirations to have as a specific item, but I think it's important to focus on the activity or the behavior that you can control that'll put you in the position to achieve that aspiration. So I talked about my podcast goal, or it's really more of an aspiration. I have a couple subset behavioral activities or goals that ultimately are my priority and my focus. So for example, this year I'm going to go out and guest appear on some other sales podcasts as a way to drive more visibility to my podcast. And that how many of those I do is 100% in my control. The outcome is more listeners, more downloads, and it will be what it will be. So, on the sales front, instead of setting a goal for club, which is something that I want to do, I'm setting a behavior goal that I believe will put me in the best position to achieve that. So for this year, I've identified one of the most important things I can do with my team to help elevate their performance. And specifically, it's around how I appreciate the work that they're doing, how I recognize some of the great behavior, and acknowledge some of the best practices around sales and territory management. And so I'm doing some things to build a structure and a program around this that'll be part of my daily habit, and it'll be built into one-on-ones, territory calls, team calls, and so on. And, when you have the talent on the team, that's obviously step one. The challenge can sometimes be helping the team cut through all the corporate noise and distractions and ultimately focus on the best practices and then leveraging their best strengths as individual sellers. So that's something I personally can control as a leader and as a manager. Number three, setting goals that don't align with a long-term vision. This is really about why. Right? Why even set a particular goal? It should be getting you to something down the road. If it's not stepping you down the yellow brick road of your bigger vision for yourself, why spend the time doing it? When I've made this mistake, the result is it quickly feels like a grind. I just become incredibly frustrated, and maybe I don't give up. Maybe I grind it out and still do it. But ultimately, I was never excited about it, and it's not a good experience. As an example, there's been multiple times where I set a goal because I was influenced by what I heard some other people doing, and I just can't help myself. My competitive juices start kicking in, and I just naturally want to one-up them, or I think it's a great idea, so I'll go do that. That is just a huge gaping pit with spikes and poisonous snakes at the bottom. You won't be successful because it's not tied to something that's actually important, something that you actually want, or something that will ultimately get you excited. The why on that goal is all the wrong why. I think was this number 4? Not reviewing my goals each day. You are either driving towards something or being driven towards something. And the reality is most of us are bouncing somewhere in between. Life has a funny way of presenting you with all kinds of priorities that ultimately get in the way of the things you want to do, especially if it relates to your goals. And I mean, that's okay. It's totally normal. And that's why I make the comment about, kind of bouncing around between the two. And by the time you hear this, NASA has just recently launched the Artemis rocket to the moon and back. And just like the Apollo lunar landing, it's an incredibly complicated mission, but the goal and the target was very clear, right? Get to the moon, get back to the planet Earth. Now, you may have heard the saying that the Apollo moon landing mission was off course 97% of the time, I think is what I've heard, and that there's these constant course corrections. And I've always kind of heard that. I just believed it. But, I did my own research, and it turns out that may not actually be true. It only had a few course corrections that required a burn to adjust course. But I guess it could be argued that the actual path of the vehicle was slightly off course until that burn was corrected. And so maybe that could drive up the percentage of it being off course. But anyways, I'm off track. Back to my point. A quick daily review of your goals is, it's a way to get back on track. You're going to veer off track over the year, and it may take some time to get back on track. The review of the goals is just a great reminder. It doesn't mean that you have to beat yourself up and get down on yourself about it. It's just an opportunity to acknowledge the deviation from the goal and start to work on or figure out some plan to course correct. I hope you are enjoying this episode. I wanted to break in with a quick commercial. During the podcast, we sometimes talk about how to invest those hard-earned commission dollars so that you can build that freedom we are all working towards achieving. Now, I built that through 20 years of real estate investing. Now, recently, my team helped me put together a webinar on how top sales pros can create passive income and achieve financial freedom with hands-off real estate investing. Now, I'm still doing this. And as I continue to invest, I'm giving opportunity for others to learn and invest alongside of me. So if you want to learn more, go check out our webinar at hightechfreedom.com/webinar. That is hightechfreedom.com/webinar. We will also put the link in the show notes. Now back to the show. My final mistake is not setting rewards for achieving goals. And look, it is so important to take a moment and recognize that you've achieved your goal. You've accomplished something big that most people fail at, right? Many people set goals and many people don't achieve goals. So if you achieve it, you should recognize it. You should celebrate it, make a big deal out of it. Now, you know what? You don't want to kind of dwell on it for the whole entire next year. That's not healthy, but you need to find a way to reward yourself, maybe pull in the family, hold a mini celebration. And personally, this is something I actually really struggle with, and including this last year. I hit a number of my goals, but I personally, I fall into this trap of feeling that achieving my goal is the reward. So for example, if I achieve the goal in my sales management role that leads to making more money, leads to some cool club trip, isn't that reward enough? In my mind, the additional income that I made from doing that helps get me closer to some bigger plan that I have. And that trip is just awesome. So, I don't need another reward on top of that. But, I think about one of my most exciting goals that I had for 2022. And it was my second year in a row of doing 30,000 push-ups. So I achieved it. And I don't mean this to brag, but just as an example, I achieved it with 2 weeks to go, took a screenshot of my push-up tracker, shared it with the family because they're part of it. I've interrupted many movie nights with my push-ups, but unfortunately I did nothing to really celebrate it. And the reason why I'm thinking so much about this is that celebration, it creates a deeper connection to the memory of the experience. It's these connections and memories ultimately that you can fall back on when challenged with some future goal or most likely some adversity impacting your ability to get to that goal. Now, this is just my opinion. I'm not a psychologist, psychiatrist. I've read 3 books on brain development and brain health, but I just know how I think. So one of the remedies that I took last year to improve on this was that I started keeping a page in the back of my quarterly planner called rewards, because one of the other challenges I had was I just couldn't think of any rewards. And so now when I see things that excite me or see things that I want, I'll put it on the list. And if I really want it, I'll hold off on getting it, and maybe I'll tie it to a reward for one of my goals. So this year, one of the ideas that I'm working on is I'm committed to hosting a mini party with my family, maybe some friends, make it kind of a joke or goofy or whatever, just an excuse to have some fun. I haven't totally figured out the details, but when I hit a goal, we'll celebrate it, and I'll make it more memorable. And it's just not something that I've been terribly successful at doing in the past. So looking forward to making some improvement this year. Well, I think that's a wrap on my 5 mistakes I have made when setting goals. So as you go forth in 2023, remember, it's okay to make mistakes. If you're not pushing yourself, if you're not trying to grow, trying to get better in life, and generally be a better human being, or I guess, let me think about that. If you are pushing yourself and trying to grow and be a better human being and just have a better life, you're going to make mistakes as you progress. So keep on pushing and just don't stop, and just try to make each week the best week ever.
Thanks again for joining us today. To get more sales and real estate tips, you can subscribe to our newsletter at hightechfreedom.com. You can also join our private Facebook and LinkedIn group that is exclusively for sales professionals. If you found a nugget of good information in the podcast, please subscribe, give us a positive rating, and write a review. If there is a topic that you would like us to cover in the future, please send us a note through our website at hightechfreedom.com. Until next week, make this your best week ever.